Breaking Bad season 3 is a thing, and that's what I'm here to talk about. Breaking Bad season 3. Hello everyone, I'm SDS Man. You all know me well, or you don't. That's who I am, SDS Man. Can we do that again? Hey, I'm SDS Man. Alright, forget about it. Listen, I'm here to talk about Breaking Bad season 3, the third one. Number 3, Trace. It's the third one. So I previously reviewed Breaking Bad season 1 and season 2 on this channel. It has been a little bit since the season 2 review. I've been pretty busy, but I finally got around to watching it. I actually finished watching it about 2.5 weeks ago at this point, maybe even a little bit longer. So my memory is a little bit more fuzzy, as I usually record these as soon as I finish the last episode of a season. But bear with me, because I may not mention some stuff. So, I'll try my best. If you haven't seen the previous 2 videos, you can check that in the description down below. But basically, to recap, I've never seen Breaking Bad before. This is my first time watching it. As of the time of this recording, I have finished the first 3 seasons, and that is it. I know literally nothing about seasons 4 and seasons 5. So this review is entirely isolated of that. I have no preconceived sort of, knowledge of what's to come. I have no idea. So I am just reviewing this sort of as a first-time viewer of a show. Many people told me to watch it, and I'm finally doing it. So this is my Breaking Bad Season 3 first reaction and review. Breaking Bad Season 3. We have a lot to talk about, kind of the usual sort of format, although a little bit more loose this time, not so strict. But I do want to say overall, I think Season 3 probably, right off the bat, just say Season 3 probably is the best season of Breaking Bad so far. I loved Season 1. I actually really loved Season 1. And then Season 2 I thought was really good as well. I thought the ending was pretty lame and pretty dumb. And that does a little bit carry over into the beginning of Season 3. But they kind of dropped the whole plane thing pretty quickly. And I think Season 3 sort of starts running, and it really doesn't stop until the very end. And I think it has some of the best moments, some of the best thematic sort of elements, and even, maybe, the best episode so far. Let's talk about it. Starting off, just like seasons 1 and 2, cinematography, incredible, amazing. This season specifically has probably some of the best camera work compared to the other 2 seasons. They focused a lot on that. It was very obvious. Cinematography, like I said, amazing, especially in the first episode. How the first episode opens up, and the colors and just the cinematography was incredible. And we're going to talk a lot about colors. This is going to be colors the review, because I have a lot to talk about with season 3 and colors. And I talked about this with 1 and 2, but I think Breaking Bad uses colors incredibly, especially for a TV show. And I think season 3 actually uses it the best, and it's only 2 episodes it uses it in such a creative and maybe less subtle notion, but it's incredible. And I'm going to talk more about that later. As for now, I'm going to talk about the writing and acting, because they're both, once again, really good. Some writing miscues do happen. Season 2 had some writing issues within it, but I think it does. They do a pretty good job, taking the story where it needs to go and adding conflict and just the character writing. It's all really good, and that does bleed over into the acting. Again, Bryan Cranston fucking nails it. This is probably his best performance. This season is probably his best performance. Not to say he's incredible in season 1 and 2, but he even takes another step up in this season. And there's some scenes and one episode that I'm talking about later where I think his acting really shines, and they definitely do a good job on focusing on his character, writing his character, and then Bryan Cranston sort of bleed into the role. They do a really good job with that. And all the other actors and actresses, all really good. This is probably one of the best acted television shows I've seen, maybe ever. It's really that good. Acting is so subtle at times, and so not only believable, but so characteristic, and so precise on how they sort of direct these actors. They do a really good job. Another note I have here, amazing transitions. I do remember there were a lot of moments in this season where they used transitions in a lot of clever ways. You know, I always appreciate that. Editing, good. Everything's good. This all, I don't really need to talk about this stuff anymore. It kind of bleeds over in season 3, and actually it gets better. The writing, acting, cinematography, all as good as they were in season 1 and 2, and in some cases even better. So before we get to the themes, I'm actually going to focus a lot on talking about, I guess, sort of the plot points and the characters, and these obviously bleeds over into the themes that we'll talk about later. But I'm kind of going to go character to character. There's a lot more to talk about this season, and definitely more characters to focus on, and then we will go from there. Starting off with Walter White, we all know him very well. And I'm now just realizing the white in his name. Like, oh my god. I am just realizing that Walter White, like the white in his name is like the color white. It shows colors really well. And white is almost like pure, like almost like, you know, like the white horse, like on the straight path. Kind of like the pure symbol. And that shows about him right now. I can't believe I just realized that right now. Wow. How did I just realize that now? Let me move on. I'm sorry. So Walter White starts off this season struggling in the beginning, sort of mentally and sort of, I guess, emotionally, you know, struggling to connect with his wife, if we can call her that. We'll talk more about that later. But what I really enjoy about Walter White in this season is he's immediately sort of out of the drug business in the very beginning of the season, and obviously he gets sucked right back into that, and that whole complex. We'll talk more about that later. But what I really like is he's on sort of the straight and narrow, and he's sort of like, you can see that in the clothes he's wearing, the colors he's wearing. He's sort of like back to himself. He's like separated himself from this, from, I guess, the drug business. But he's still really struggling. And what I really like about that is it shows that maybe his actions at this point are not only irreversible, not only completely irreversible, but even beyond that. He's still struggling despite sort of getting on the clean and narrow, and we see Walt kind of do some. He starts really breaking down. We see, like, again, his relationship with his wife. He has a hard time connecting to Jesse. He has a hard time reconnecting to his job. He even like damn near sexually assault like the principal in that one scene. Like, the dude is just like, he's like almost beyond repair, and he's really struggling to just be himself, he's just struggling to be a person. He's struggling to be Walter White, and we sort of start to see the cracks show at the beginning. And then what I really like is he eventually sort of starts getting in the business mode, and he starts manipulating people. What I really like is he has this very smart plan to manipulate Jesse. In the Hank and Jesse situation, where Hank literally beats the shit out of Jesse, Walt sort of is stuck in the middle. Obviously, those are his two worlds colliding, Hank being sort of a representation of his personal non-drug life, and Jesse obviously being a representation of his drug life. Those two literally clashing, and he's sort of in the middle, and that spends a lot of the season sort of dealing with that, which I really like. Sort of the balance of the lives, and I think in this season we actually see his lives emerging. I mean, the first episode, he literally admits to his wife, "Hey, yeah, I'm selling meth, or rather cooking meth." I mean, that's the first time we see those worlds colliding, because he kept those separate, and obviously that line has been thinning since the beginning of the season and showing signs of cracking. But it straight up bursts open. He's just like, "Yeah, I deal meth," and then this season is basically sort of dealing with his two lives from basically clashing, and his sort of holding both sides apart from each other, and that is represented in the Hank and Jesse situation. And he really does. It's interesting watching him sort of manipulate Jesse to sort of join back on his side, you know, start working in his lab, which we'll talk more about later, to sort of both remedy the situation between Hank and Jesse and also help his personal drug business. So I found that really interesting. He's definitely more manipulative this season than ever before. He also replaces Gail, his lab assistant, pretty early on, and we see him sort of manipulate Gail, or at the very least, like, struggle to really connect with Gail, And he's the perfect lab assistant for him, but he's not what he looks for in his life, and he definitely relies on Jesse more in a personal level. That's an example of that, because he doesn't really rely on Jesse in a professional level, because he's really not like that professionally sound, but he definitely has an emotional connection to Jesse, and we see that by him literally replacing Gale with Jesse, even though it's probably the worst option. It ends up sort of biting him in the ass a bit. I love, obviously Hank gets shot and is in the hospital, and I love the scenes when Walter White is in the hospital. He's around the DEA, and the irony sort of around that is very funny, because he's literally around them, and they're the guy that he's after. He's sort of working with them. You know, the irony is obvious, but it's still done so well. And I really like in the hospital, there's that hospital scene with one of the twins, which we'll talk about in a second, and it's very gruesome. It's one of the most horrifying scenes in the show so far, and one of the actually best scenes in the show, in my opinion. And I feel like that scene is showing like the effects that this drug business has on people, what it can lead to, the effects the DEA has, and I think this acts as like a one last warning to let Walter White back out. Like, this shows Walter White, hey, you could become this. The DEA might do this to you. This is what the drug business could do to you. This is your last chance to back out. And ultimately, he doesn't do it. But I feel like it's one last warning. And the show does set up like maybe he will, but obviously it wouldn't be Breaking Bad if he did. I also loved Walter White interacting with Gus in the hospital. That was awesome. Really cool. I love that. And obviously sort of the worlds colliding once again, because Gus also sort of has like two different worlds, and Gus, like Jesse, very much in Walter's, you know, other world, that being his personal life, but then we see him sort of bleeding in, or that being his drug life, I should say, and we see him bleeding in to his personal life, which I really like. Yeah, really love that. Also, a thematic point we'll touch on later, but Walt in this season, almost latter half of the season, almost surrenders in a way to Gus, and he sort of like views Gus as a boss, and I think that is him sort of slipping back into his old life of work under a boss. Like, we saw him in the car wash at the beginning of the season working under the boss. He's like, fuck you. And then he became doing his own thing, and for the last two seasons, we've kind of seen him operate his own way. And now we see him sort of slipping back into that system where he's like an employee to the boss, and that's sort of what he's been trying to defy. But maybe it's because of what's comfortable to him, or maybe it's because he just cannot escape sort of the, I guess, sort of like American method of, I guess, work, bossmanship. He kind of becomes subservient again. He slips back into the life. Like, he can't escape that life no matter what he tries to do. And he embraces it. He doesn't fight it, which I find very interesting as well. Now we're going to talk about Jesse. I think Jesse is more fleshed out this season than ever before. I think they do a really good job on focusing on Jesse when they need to, and sort of showing Jesse's sort of, I guess, moral compass or moral grounds, you could say. So Jesse in the beginning of the season, while Walt is sort of struggling, Jesse is in a way thriving, right? Walt, without the drug business, we see him sort of having a hard time adjusting to it, but Jesse almost doesn't. And I know it's because of rehab, I guess, but he's sort of, you know, the scene where he buys his parents' house is incredible, and we sort of see him sort of like thriving in a way, or at least like in an external way. Internally, he is struggling. They do a good job of him listening to the voicemail of course, his ex-girlfriend dying, and I really enjoyed that part. And he definitely still is struggling internally. And he seems to be in maybe a better place externally, but we sort of see him slip once again, just like Walter, but in a different way, back into the drug business. Yeah, the drug business in the season is definitely like a black hole and sort of sucks anyone even close to it. And Walt and Jesse have escaped it multiple times, but they both get sucked in, both for different reasons and both in different ways, but they sort of end up on the same trajectory again and again. And that's something I really enjoy about this show. Continuing with Jesse, we see he has an amazing revenge dialogue when dealing with Hank, and that sort of sets him off again, maybe sets him on the path that he shouldn't have been set on. But we do see he has this amazing monologue of how he's going to take down Hank and how he's going to get revenge on him and how no one's going to speak for him. And that's when we start to finally explore his sort of revenge, his thirst for revenge, and maybe his moral obligations. And that boils over, obviously, later in the season, where he has to make a decision to take revenge on the people who killed his friend, which he ultimately does. And I loved the scenes where everyone's trying to convince him not to, for the sake of the business, right? But he can't let go of that morality when he finds out that they were using the child for the drug operation, and they end up killing him. He just loses it and then decides to kill them. And then ultimately we see at the very, very end, he has to save the business. So we see him kill someone, right? We see them. He actually doesn't directly kill them, I guess. Walt sort of does, but he is responsible for it in a way. We see him at least kill or attempt to two people for personal reasons, and then we see him at the end of the season kill someone for professional reasons. He has no real reason to kill Gale, and we see him he struggles to sort of do it, and he knows it's wrong, and I think he finally just loses it and just does it. And he does it for Walter. He does it for the business. That's hard for him. Doing it for personal reasons wasn't hard, and doing it for what he found on moral grounds was hard. He knows this is immoral, and I'm very interested to see how this affects him in the later seasons, especially next season, of course. And of course, that's how the season ends, on that shot with the gun at the camera. Amazing shot, and him pulling the trigger. There's nothing to be said after that, and we'll have to see where ultimately that takes us. But yeah, Jesse's moral compass and moral ground is definitely challenged this season, and that's something I really enjoy exploring. And just like Walt, Jesse is sort of, I guess, Breaking Bad. Speaking of Breaking Bad, let's talk about Hank. Hank last season was definitely someone who I was rooting for, and not necessarily. It's not that I necessarily stopped rooting for him this season, but I was rooting for him very hard in the last season. And Hank at this season almost sort of, we see his breaking point and how he can sort of break bad, if that makes any sense. And obviously it starts with him like getting obsessed over who is making this blue meth, and obviously assaulting Jesse, and we sort of see his breaking point. He's sort of broken. He's spent all night and all day. He's given up the job of his dreams, which was a very, very important choice he made. We see him sort of struggling to have a relationship with his wife, and then finally his breaking point is he gets tricked. He has the obviously Walt and Jesse right in his hands, and they escape him, and that's his breaking point. He fucking loses it. And then we also sort of see how Hank is sort of a control freak. He sort of desires that sort of masculine sort of dominance, that masculine sort of control over things. And when he's in the hospital during his recovery, we see a lot of his connection with masculinity, his connection with helplessness. He sort of is just like a douchebag. He's sort of an asshole to everyone around him while he's recovering, and that's because he doesn't want to be viewed as helpless. He has such a like traditional stout view on masculinity that whenever that escapes him, he sort of responds with anger and with sort of passionate detest. And what I really like is that, so we see that sort of energy come out with Jesse. This season is very much exploring Hank's breaking point, and I think I love Hank as a character. I loved him more and more as the series has gone on, and I love where they're taking Hank, and I love showing that Hank just he can't live under this helplessness. And obviously I'm curious to see how he recovers in this show and how that will affect his psyche and his character, because Hank is definitely a damaged person, and we see that we see the start of that in season 2, and that carries over in this season. Psychologically, he has his breaking points, and I definitely like exploring that, and I hope to see where they'll take Hank in the future. Skyler also has a pretty significant role in the season, and a much different role. And at the beginning, we see her doing a lot of things to spite Walt, but she also defends Walt. At the beginning of the season, the police come and she could easily say, hey, this dude's cooking meth. Boom, right there. And then there's even a point where he's confronted in the hospital against Marie when she's like, yo, you are a terrible person, you're awful, you're bad. And he can literally, she's even like, oh, this wouldn't happen if you never dealt weed, or you never bought weed from Jesse, which obviously didn't happen. But and I like that Skyler comes to his defense. She can easily jump on the bandwagon and say, yeah, fuck this guy, but she comes to his defense, which is a very interesting character moment. And I think she obviously knows what he is doing is wrong, but she is still defending him. It's very interesting. And then of course we see her getting involved in sort of the financial aspect of the business, which, for me was a little bit not boring, but just not super interesting as much as some other parts. But I get why they're doing it. But seeing her getting involved in Walter's life, or drug life I should say, again, the two lives, the season is all about his two lives merging, and we see that with Skyler and Walt, and I really enjoy that. And I think that creates for some sort of funny, ironic scenes, and seeing him enter his life is definitely like kind of like hard to. It's like, whoa, like this is weird, right? Like it's kind of hard to digest, if you will. But it's really good. I also like she shakes hands with Gus in the hospital. And obviously, there's so many layers of irony behind that it's so obvious. You guys know it already. Skyler also uses gambling as sort of an excuse for what Walt was doing. Obviously, where the money came from. Obviously, it's not that, we know that, but I like how she uses that as an excuse and sort of justifies Hank's action. Justifies Walt's actions, justifies Walt's money, and even sort of justifies maybe her future involvement with it, if that makes any sense. And obviously, yeah, the question is, we see Hank and Jesse sort of go on this path. Is Skyler reaching her breaking point? Is she breaking bad? She uses the gambling to challenge Walt and to challenge him and directly confront his sort of drug, his cooking sort of in front of Marie and to herself. I think that's sort of an outlet, because she has a hard time just saying you're a drug dealer and accepting that, but she can use gambling as sort of like a front. And obviously we see her involved in the money laundering scheme, which I'm very, very interested to see where that goes, and it could end up being an important sort of touching point on the show. We'll have to see. Marie has some good scenes this season. I noticed that they used the color purple around her character a lot, whether she's wearing purple or whether the stuff around her is purple. But I did notice her color a lot of time is purple. Not sure what exactly that means, but it is something that to think about. And then we kind of see her breaking point, at least in regards to Hank. With dealing with Hank. When she finds out that he didn't have a gun on him, or when she finds out what maybe really transpired in his events, she sort of breaks at everyone, and she sort of starts attacking everyone. We see her sort of reach her breaking point, and her relationship with Hank is explored this season really more than ever before. It never really was explored in season 1 or 2, maybe a little bit in season 2, but we finally get to explore how her relationship with Hank acts, and I think it's interesting. Maybe unhealthy, but interesting. Moving on, Walt Jr., he sort of has a little bit of character growth this season, and we sort of see him have a struggling relationship with his father, and he sort of acts as sort of like a kind of pure sort of byproduct of Walt, and sort of a treasure that Walt doesn't want to corrupt. So I'm very interested to see, Walt Jr., and I guess you could say Hank and Marie, but Walt Jr. much more is like the only aspect of Walt's life that isn't involved in his, drug life. Like, again, this season's about his two worlds colliding. Everything's still separate, or everything that was separate is now really not. I mean, Hank even sort of is in both of his lives, both of his, his two lives. But Walt Jr. is the only one who's sort of still only related to him in his personal life. So I'm very interested to see if Walt Jr. sort of gets involved in that. Saul, I really like Saul this season. We see him trying to take advantage of Jesse's being, and I really like that. And what I really like is Saul sort of is stuck between the Walt and Jesse and Gus dispute. which is kind of like a three-way conflict. He's sort of right in the middle, and he kind of tries to like ally all three of them, and he sort of has to sort of amend both sides, and I really enjoy that. And I really like how Saul acts as sort of like that, that middle ground, I guess, person. I don't know what else to say, but yeah, Saul's good this season. He's a great. He's definitely one of the funniest characters. Bob Odenkirk does a really good job. And yeah, Saul's a great character. He's good. He acts as a perfectly acceptable middle ground character. Gus, on the other hand, isn't this pure sort of middle ground person. Although neither is Saul. He's not pure, but Gus is much more on the darker side. And we sort of start exploring that in this season. I really like how they show him and his sort of like marketing or capitalization of the drug business. I find that really interesting. And of course, we see him, feeding and shaking the hands of the DEA in the hospital. Obviously, we understand the irony behind that, and him sort of hiding in plain sight. We find out his real reason for visiting when one of the twin dies. Obviously. The twin that's alive rather dies. We sort of see his master play, his master plan. He sort of like cuts out the entire family when the other one gets raided. He sort of is planning everything so meticulously, and it's falling right into his hands. The only problem, the only loose screw that needs to be tightened is Jesse, right? And his emotional connection with the drug business and the people involved. And we see sort of his struggle with maintaining him and Walt, and sort of maybe and his plan to just cut them out because they don't fit his business. They don't fit right into his system. And that's just malicious and creates a great conflict, and I love it. And yeah, I love how they show the process of manufacturing meth. Hiding right in the lab, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and right in the laundromat, and obviously sort of having this whole system of moment, system of people, system of actions that pretty much make him like the puppet master, and I find that really interesting. So that's enough of characters. I'm going to talk about themes in a second, but I do want to talk about one specific episode. So going into this show, obviously you guys know a lot of people told me, hey, you got to see Breaking Bad. Hey, you got to see Breaking Bad. There was one episode that I heard the name of called The Fly. So I knew The Fly was a bottle episode, and I enjoy myself some good bottle episodes here and there. I knew that this episode was sort of split in the fandom, because I remember some person telling me, hey, you gotta watch Breaking Bad. Every episode of Breaking Bad is incredible. Well, of course, except The Fly. So that had me interested. Like, is this episode that bad? I like bottle episodes. Will I like this episode? And I remember watching the episode, and my first thoughts were, wow, you guys suck. You guys are so wrong. Yeah, The Fly is maybe my favorite Breaking Bad episode up to this point, and actually probably is. And I remember everyone just being like, man, it's boring, nothing happens, and I don't get what the hell they're talking about, because that episode is packed to the core with amazing cinematography, amazing thematic, just amazing themes, I should say, and amazing character moments and character interactions. So briefly, I'll just talk about why I really like this episode. This episode does an amazing job. It slows things down. It's just a Jesse and Walt episode in the lab, and obviously The Fly is a representation of the small problems in life, and Walt needs everything to be perfect, so he has to kill this fly that represents these small problems that just you can never really stop, and how that fly drives him to madness. There's some great moments where Jesse and Walt have some really heartfelt moments. We sort of get the complexes of each of the characters. I really like how Walt, this episode, is sort of breaking down. We sort of see him and his breaking point. We also see Jesse much more emotionally connected to everything. Walt, and we see Walt's emotional side breakthrough. But this episode, I can make a whole video on this episode, and hey, maybe I will. Maybe I'll watch this episode again and just make a whole video on this episode. It's very possible. It would probably come out after I review season 4 and 5, but there's a good chance I just make a video just about this episode because I think it's really that good. And yeah, it's my favorite Breaking Bad episode. It's one of the best episodes of television I've seen in a long time. And anyone who says they don't like this episode, I don't understand. I'm curious why that is, because this episode is fucking perfect in my mind. Like, I love it. I love it. And yeah, there's no gunfight. There's no car chase. Doesn't need to be, right? Like it's just this episode is a perfect pause and a perfect sort of reminder on why we watch this show and the characters involved in them and how they are so, how they are so poignant and how they are so interesting and important, and why we watch the show. I could talk about this episode forever, and I'm not going to, because I'm already pretty far in this video and we still have a little bit to go, so I'm gonna hold off on that. We're talking about colors now. I like colors. I love them a lot. I love all the colors. And Breaking Bad may do colors better than any TV show. I mean, at least live action wise. Let's talk about some colors here. So there's a lot of instances of very interesting colors, like I said, blue and such. But there's one, or purple, I should say, with Marie. But there's one instance in a couple episodes, and they make it very poignant when they deal with colors. There's an episode called Green Light, and there's a sequence of episodes, about 2, where we see colors used sort of as like a light, like a stoplight. What I mean is, there are 3 colors in a stoplight. There is green, there is yellow, and there is red. And I think in this show so far, we've seen these colors, red, green, and yellow, used as sort of like warning signs towards towards Walt, or rather his involvement with the drug system. What I mean is, Walt sort of exits the drug business. Like, Walt is like, I'm done with this, I'm not doing this anymore. And he's the green light at the very end of one episode sort of acts as like a comeback into the system, if that makes any sense. We see Walt wearing a lot of green, and I think that is sort of showing that he's good. He's going. He's on the not the good side, but he's in the right direction, if you will. And what I really like is yellow in this season has been used a lot. This show has a bunch of yellow, and it's always used as a warning sign. And then Gus tries to get him back in the business, and there's this amazing scene where Walter White is wearing a green shirt, and Gus is wearing a yellow shirt. Gus is like the yellow light to the green light of Walt. He is warning him. It's like a warning. Do not get back into this. And then they went into the lab. And that's when it blew my mind. Because the lab is all red. It is red. The floor, it's fucking red. Like, it is just red. And that is fucking genius. Because Walter has the green, Gus has the yellow right in between, and then of course the lab is the red. The lab is the final, like, you have to stop. Do not get involved in this. The final warning. And then he of course embraces the lab, and that's where we see everything go to shit. Of course in The Fly, but then later with like the last like 3 episodes. And it's like the final warning sign, and he doesn't stop. That's what the lab represents to me, is once he accepts working in the lab and gets involved in the lab, that's the point where there's no going back. There's no returning. He has crossed the path. The yellows trying to stop him throughout the beginning seasons. He's now just gone right past them into the red. And yeah, like the genius of that, with the sort of green, yellow, red light. I definitely noticed it when I saw the green light and I saw him wearing green. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then when I saw the yellow on Gus, I'm like, oh shit, that's like the yellow. And then he takes him to the red. And I'm like, holy fucking shit. So genius. So smart. So clever. Yeah, how they use colors this season. Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. And the lab being all red, it is so smart. It is so genius. I think I literally went, oh my fucking god. I said that exactly when we were introduced to the lab. So really good job. Beyond the colors, other thematic points I want to talk about. It seems like the season definitely comments a lot on the American healthcare system, with Hank sort of a hero. He's a hero, I guess you could say. Whatever you want. It's a tough word to throw around. But Hank, doing, taking down the 2 drug lords. He's a police officer, putting his life on the line. And they're like, oh, you can't pay for his healthcare? That's a shame. And obviously, sort of relying on... It's hilarious. Hank, the person trying to take down the drug lord, trying to take down Walter White. Hank's recovery relies on the money that Walter White made. Walter White, who Hank is trying to stop, is getting funded by Walter White's money. The irony is so rich, so scrumptious. I love it. I fucking love it. And it just is a big commentary on, isn't that fucked up? Let's look at this American healthcare system thing. How fucked up is that? This season also comments on the American dream. It's been doing that the past couple seasons, but Walt sort of falls into the American dream sort of, I guess, scope once again by becoming literally subservient to Gus, saying, I am, trying to climb the ladder the last 2 seasons, and then just falls right back in the place where he belongs, right under a boss. Sort of slipping back into that American dream sort of philosophy. We also get a lot of themes of revenge and morality. A lot of this is with Jesse, but we also see this with Hank, and we even see this with Walt. Sort of with the morality line is broken a lot throughout this series, but this season we definitely see characters ride the line and then maybe cross over in the direction we don't want them to cross over in, especially Jesse. So, yeah, this season a lot of good jobs dealing with revenge and morality. Last big thematic element I wanted to touch upon in this season is masculinity. It feels like this season definitely focuses a lot on sort of not necessarily the importance of, but the prevalence of masculinity. Mostly with Hank and Walt. We see, even Walt say a line, I believe it was like, Hank is more of a man than I can ever be. Sort of almost submitting, or at least crediting Hank with having this like good masculinity character to him that Walt wishes he could have. I love it. Yeah, all those themes and more. There's a lot of themes that leak in from the past seasons that I could talk about, but I'm not really going to talk about them only due to time restraint. But I do definitely want to make a video about The Fly, and I probably will do that. Maybe in like a couple of months after I finish the series, I'll do another Breaking Bad video about The Fly. But yeah, overall, this season, really good. I loved it. I definitely loved it. The use of colors, the thematic, character elements, all there. Cinematography, writing, acting. Like, this show has everything that I look for in a good show. And I think this season definitely is the best so far. This season is definitely better than season 1 and 2, which I enjoyed those seasons. I had problems with them, and I do have a bit of problems with how the season starts off. It does drop the whole plane element pretty quickly, which I appreciate because of how stupid it is. But I'm also like, that wouldn't really happen in this world, but whatever. I feel like the writers even acknowledged it was kind of stupid, maybe. Either way, yeah, I love this season. It's really good. As soon as episode 2 and 3 sort of kick off, the season really gears into motion. I can't speak. I've had trouble speaking in this video. I'm sorry. This is what happens when you don't have a script. This is what happens, ladies and gentlemen. I fucked that up. I couldn't even say ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, I'd give this probably this season maybe a 9 out of 10. But it's riding the line between a 9 and a 10. It's not a 10 out of 10. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. It's so close. It is so close to being a 10 out of 10. I have some issues here and there. But this does things so right. It's practically a 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10. Around there. For me, a 10 out of 10 doesn't need to be perfect because no piece of media is ever perfect. But it does so many things right. It's like a 9.5. It's so close. But yeah, it's my Breaking Bad Season 3 reaction and review. If you want to see my reaction and review to Season 1 and Season 2, You can check that out in the description. I haven't started watching season 4 yet. Obviously, I'm probably going to start doing that the day of recording this. So when this video actually comes out, I probably already am in the middle of watching season 4, and I'll probably have a video on that maybe near the end of December, end of December. December's a busy month for me. I'm going to be streaming a lot, and I'm going to be starting a new job most likely, and obviously the holidays as well. So I am going to be very busy in December. There is a chance that the season 4 video will happen in early January, but I will try to get it out in the middle of December. So do be aware of that. But thank you all so much for watching. Check out Breaking Bad. Check out my other videos. Check out the links in the description below. And until then, I'm very excited to see where the show goes. And I'm sort of nervous. I'm very nervous because I hate watching these characters that I actually like and love sort of break down. And God, it's gonna get tough to watch. I feel like the show's gonna get tough to watch in a good way. So nervous. All right, guys. I'll see you next time. Until then, don't be like Jesse. Don't be like Jesse. You know, rise above your thirst for revenge. Yeah.